Well, I'm going to tell you, just to tee it up, when you're looking at the M2M and IoT marketplace, AT&T is doing some phenomenal work in this market. Actually, they're, won an award also as the Carrier of the Year as well, too, and a host of other awards that they've won here. And if you really look at it, these guys have been enabling companies from the enterprise level all the way down to, startup companies. So these guys are doing great work. So to kick it off, Shiraz, just kind of introduce yourself and just tell them, the audience about your role at AT&T and some of the things that you're seeing taking place.
Sure, thank you, Keith. Good afternoon, everybody. Like Keith said, I'm Shiraz Hasan. I run the Industrial IoT Business Development Team for AT&T globally. And what that means is I have a team of machine-to-machine or industrial Internet of Things solutions experts that are responsible for taking AT&T's connectivity, embedding it with solutions that help our customers truly take advantage of the phenomena that we've all been talking about. So glad to be here.
Now, one of the interesting things, when you look at this market, if I looked at it several years ago, how you had companies thought that they would be the primary ones that would actually dominate the market space, and you'd have all these different silos out there. But what was interesting now is that we're seeing the market actually evolve, kind of like what Alan had mentioned a little bit earlier and what we talked about. A lot of these markets are markets within markets and different vertical markets. And for the first time, I'm seeing a lot of different companies participate, like Rockwell Automation, which is one of your companies, mentioned about opening up the stack, which is unheard of from those type of companies. Tell us a little bit about some of the partners that you're selecting and how do you see this market evolving with companies working more closely together and how that's impacting AT&T's growth?
The key thing in this space is, right, almost every Fortune 1000, regardless of the industry you're in, wants to get in this space. And it's very important to stay true to who you really are, right? And we've taken a very cognizant approach to that. We have developed a very large ecosystem of partners in the IoT space, but we have been very selective within each vertical which partners to go pick from. And as we get approached by additional partners or companies or even startups to join our ecosystem, we truly require them to come in with something that's somewhat of a differentiator of things that we don't already have in the partner ecosystem, so that we can continue to have a conversation with our customers who really have also become part of the ecosystem. You talked about the Rockwell automation that we showcased at the Dev Conference earlier this week. We also had Emerson, Climate Control President, up there talking about how we're going to connect commercial size ovens. And in helping Emerson do that, we had to work with Emerson's suppliers that develop those ovens for them to help them embed cellular connectivity. And to us, to create that relationship is opening a whole lot of doors in an industry that we typically might not have gone after. And that was a brand new relationship in a new ecosystem of partners that we've created. Same thing we're doing for Rockwell as well. So I think it's important to realize as you evolve in the IoT space is stay true to who you are and take advantage of the expertise that already exists and not try to recreate it within your organization. We're a very big company, and we've tried some of that in the past to do all ourselves, and I think you'll see more and more from an AT&T perspective an approach that relies on the expertise that exists in the ecosystem to leverage that.
Great. Now, I know, we're at the CES event and you see all these unique products and stuff from a consumer standpoint. What about some of the unique, use cases that you've seen or developments that you've seen on the enterprise side that, that may not be on people's radar right now?
The things that we take for granted a little bit in day-to-day life, right? Or we as an average consumer may not notice. So we have, in the next couple of years, what you'll see is assets getting smarter that you would think, you wouldn't imagine would be. So think about a pallet manufacturing company that manufactures wooden pallets, that all their job is to provide the wooden pallet to the goods provider that loads the goods on their pallets and delivers it to a Walmart or a Costco or a Sam's Club. The cost of that pallet for them to build is between $7 to $12. but they want that pallet tracked because their ability to bill for that pallet to that goods provider and then to that large retailer, there's a lot of revenue in it. So we are working on innovative ideas to cost effectively enable assets through which new sources of revenue can be generated. And that's what the end customers are looking for us to come in with innovative ideas to them. So I think that's some of the things we'll see. You won't see that, I don't think, at a CES demo floor anytime soon. But as you see more and more innovation happen, next time you go to a Costco or a Sam's Club, I'm sure some of you look at those pallets differently.
Okay, now if we look at it, in the enterprise side, it really has the ability to transform business models and just really disrupt the market. Obviously, you look at the insurance industry with UBI, for example, where that could actually really change the overall business model for insurance. But then you see a lot of areas where it's going to change as well. What do you think will be the key market that we may see in 2015 and this year, where we start seeing some traction and maybe in some of the industrial markets that will be starting to see the disruption?
I think it'll happen in two different ways, right? So if we're going to see an actual impact, I think for those of us that have worked in the IoT space or the M2M space for a few years know that these implementation takes several years to get to a volume level that make an industry level impact. So if you're looking for a 2015 impact or a 2016 impact, those deployments already exist in the market. The impact you'll see there is how those companies start utilizing that information that is coming from those assets today. What we're seeing more and more of is the ability to take that information. What you'll see from a new innovation perspective is more and more companies are looking to figure out how do you take that information and bifurcate that and offer it to different entities within an ecosystem that may have different use for it. So let me give you an example. A John Deere tractor that is working with a few tillers out in the middle of a cornfield in Iowa, for example, needs to perform at optimal levels. And John Deere wants to know how that machine on a daily, weekly basis is performing. The leasing company that has leased that equipment to the farmer needs to know if it's performing at the right level, or do they need to charge, how often do they need to charge them, because that equipment gets charged by hour. So that's a different source of information. And then the farmer itself may want to know at what percent is the equipment performing at optimal levels. And what we announced at the developers conference is an M2X capability that allows our customers with a single connection into a John Deere truck to bifurcate that information and provide it securely to 3 different entities. So I think the innovation you'll see in the IoT space is going to be more from that perspective of how that data more and more gets utilized.
Now, interesting, we're on the topic of data, and you hear a lot about big data and data analytics and predictive analytics and everything else that we see in the marketplace. What do you see are some of the best strategies for companies to turn that data into actionable data? Because at the end of the day, you can have a whole bunch of numbers, but if it's not actionable, it doesn't mean anything. So what do you think are some of the best strategies there?
Every time we talk to our customers, to CIOs or executives within the enterprise space, one of the first things we say is don't think of it as big data. And let's just get rid of the hype. Just talk about the small pieces of that data comes in and which portions of that within your enterprise that information is relevant to, and distribute it accordingly. So I think the biggest problem with big data is because we call it big data and we make it into something that I don't personally think it is. There is lots of information coming out, but the only information that matters in that space is the information that's useful. So if you can translate the noise from the actual information that matters effectively, I think that's what companies are more and more getting focused on.
Now, globalization, that's a huge trend in the IoT and M2M market on the enterprise side. We're seeing a lot of activity, a lot of movement in the marketplace, companies positioning themselves right now. How do you think this competitive landscape is going to change especially for the carriers over time, as we look at these markets become more global, especially in markets where, like the oil and gas industry or, like Maersk, which is one of your clients in the shipping industry as well, too. So how do you think this landscape's going to change with some of the other carriers in some of the other regions of the world?
I think Stephanie said something in her opening comments around co-opetition and how we all need to work a little bit better together. I think we're going to get forced to create better relationships with roaming carriers. We already have a global solution that companies like Maersk that you mentioned, or our connected car customers like GM use today to deploy a single SKU across the globe and giving those assets or those cars the ability to permanently roam. One of the key things that you'll see is, from a global scale, I think we're beyond the point of providing just global connectivity. I think now more and more is, as we get into some of the more data sensitive countries of the world, like the Brazils, the Chinas, and the Indias of the world, the ability to keep that information local, keep the ability to prove that that information can be maintained locally and securely, is going to become a bigger aspect of that global conversation going forward.
That's interesting. You're talking about the connected car. We see a lot of connected vehicles here. I know that you're on the enterprise side as well, too. But one of the interesting things, I was at a breakfast the other day on the connected car, and as we look at the connected car, maybe from a business standpoint, you may have some of these sub-markets, say, for example, someone that may be a real estate agent or some of these other people that may be very mobile, which we may not think from a business standpoint. What do you think some of the innovation will be with those type of uses with the connected vehicle in the future?
I think the possibility is really endless, and it's up to our imagination to get creative and come up with solutions, right? So think about if 10, 15 years ago we sat here and talked about if we connected the home with high-speed internet, what would be the possibilities? I don't think we could have even sat here and predict everything that's connected inside the house. I think it started off with connecting the car for an OnStar type service that GM offers. Now you've seen some commercials where it's being that same connectivity can be used for infotainment. That same connectivity is being used to provide predictive maintenance information. You'll see, from a monetization perspective, you'll see a lot of the dealers having the ability to proactively offer you services and discounts when your car's due for service. Some of us are already seeing that. So I think what you'll see is we will all have a lot more sensors on us, and their ability to connect to the car and leave with us as we leave the house or as we get into the car is where the future of the connected car is going.
And last question here, like Stephanie mentioned earlier, we're going to always probably mention this for every fireside chat. If we break out that crystal ball, in the M2M and IoT space, because we're looking at it from an enterprise standpoint, what do you think will be some of the key issues and challenges, or actually hot topics that we'll be talking about, maybe 5 years down the road?
It's a difficult one to answer in the IoT space, because I think one of the reasons one of the things we're seeing is as a society, as an industry, is we're getting used to the idea of everything being connected. I think one of the key things would be security, right? As we get more and more connected. Late last year, I was at an event, and there was a startup that showed personal security against connected devices. So I have 3 little boys. I'll give you guys a quick story. So if I go to a restaurant tomorrow night, which my family's not in Vegas, but let's just play with me here for a second, right? And I sit down at a table, and somebody's sitting across from me wearing glasses with a camera built into it, and they're taking pictures of me and my family having dinner. What if I could wear something under my collar that if a camera gets pointed at me, it just gets blocked? It's not allowed to take a picture. So I think there's other industries that'll evolve out of this as we go forward. I think there will be, and I think you'll see more and more security type solutions come out at the personal level and even at the enterprise level to help us live more freely like we all like to, and not be scared of letting some of these things get connected. So, thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot, Shiraz. Thanks a lot.